Let me ask you something you're not ready to answer. What if the war you're afraid of already has a date? What if, while the rest of the world scrolls through Instagram and celebrates independence, two nuclear-armed nations are sitting on the edge of something unthinkable, and one man already knows when it's going to start? I'm talking about August 14, Pakistan's Independence Day, a day of pride, history, and possibly a military strike. The question no one wants to ask out loud is this: is Narendra Modi planning a surprise attack on Pakistan on August 14th? And before you roll your eyes, understand this. We've seen this exact pattern before. The signs are there. The timing is emotional. The silence is strategic. This is not a theory. It's a warning. And if you think this doesn't matter to you, you're wrong. By the time you finish this video, you'll understand exactly why. There are dates in history that carry more weight than armies. August 14 is one of them. For Pakistan, August 14 is not just a national holiday. It is a sacred identity marker. It is the day when in 1947, a separate Muslim homeland emerged out of the dying body of British India. It represents victory, freedom, and the dream of self-rule. Every Pakistani child is taught from day one that this is the day their country stood up and took its place in the world. The green and white flag is raised with pride. Streets are filled with lights. Anthems echo through the air. It is not just a celebration. It is an emotion. And that's exactly what makes it so powerful and so vulnerable. Because when a nation celebrates its soul, it exposes its heart. And if you want to strike maximum psychological damage, you don't just drop bombs. You drop them on the day that matters most. If Modi were to choose August 14 as the day of a military strike on Pakistan, it would not be a random tactical decision. It would be a calculated emotional attack, one that aims not only to cripple defense infrastructure, but to shatter national morale. Here's why it's strategic. 1, emotional undermining. On a day of pride, a surprise attack creates instant humiliation. Imagine this. While school children are waving flags and fireworks light up the skies, an airstrike hits a military base or strategic target. The emotional whiplash is devastating. What should have been joy becomes trauma. The entire celebration is turned into a moment of fear and helplessness. That doesn't just affect military officials. It demoralizes the entire population, from civilians to soldiers. The message is clear. We decide when you celebrate. We decide when you bleed. 2, global psychological messaging. Such a move would not go unnoticed on the international stage. Choosing Pakistan's Independence Day is a loud and clear message to the world that India isn't playing defense. It's taking control of the narrative. It says to America, to China, and to the UN, we are not afraid to redefine red lines. It also sends a message to Kashmiri, to Indian Muslims, and to domestic opposition that Modi's India is not just muscular, it's unapologetic. It's a form of psychological warfare where perception becomes power. 3, timing for political leverage. The months leading up to August 14 are always politically hot in South Asia. In Pakistan, it's a time of national unity, but also of reflection, where criticism and challenges to the government resurface. In India, it is close to the symbolic August 15th. India's own Independence Day. A strike just one day before that gives Modi a double win. He disrupts Pakistan's national celebration, then uses his own Independence Day speech to frame the attack as a patriotic victory. It becomes a 2-day media cycle of nationalist euphoria, exactly what any populist leader would want before elections or political realignment. He has a timid and mindful. 4. The surprise factor Pakistan would least expect a strike on its most sacred day. Why? Because it assumes India would never stoop so low. But that's exactly why it would work. History shows us that effective military action often happens when rules are broken, not followed. And Modi's government has increasingly shown that it doesn't play by past diplomatic codes, whether it's revoking Article 370 or carrying out the Balakot airstrikes without crossing international borders. By choosing August 14, India would be flipping the script entirely, using tradition and pride against Pakistan itself. In conclusion, August 14 is not just a date on a calendar. It's Pakistan's heartbeat. And attacking on that day wouldn't just be military, it would be emotional, symbolic, and devastating. Modi's possible use of this date would be one of the boldest psychological operations in modern South Asian history. This isn't just about strategy. This is about storytelling through violence and sending a message, not with words, but with timing. Understanding Narendra Modi's mindset is critical to decoding what seems unthinkable, a surprise military strike on Pakistan, on August 14, no less. To many outside India, Modi may seem like a standard nationalist leader, but to those who watch him closely, Modi is not driven just by strategy or diplomacy. He is driven by momentum, image, and timing. He does not govern in silence. He governs by symbolism, and if there's one thing that fuels his political engine more than anything else, it's controlled confrontation, especially with Pakistan. Let's be clear, Modi doesn't want war, but he does want dominance. He thrives on perception victories, short, sharp actions that rally domestic support, intimidate rivals, and portray him as a protector of the Indian nation. This pattern has shown up again and again during his political tenure. Balakot, the blueprint of Modi's strategy. Take the 2019 Balakot airstrike as a case study. After the Pulwama suicide bombing, India struck deep into Pakistan's territory, targeting what it claimed were terrorist training camps. That strike wasn't just military. It was political gold for Modi. Within days, his popularity skyrocketed. The media spun it as a show of strength. Opposition leaders were forced into silence. Modi's image as the Chowkidar watchman of the nation was reborn, and he coasted into the elections with a dominant narrative. Only I can protect India. The lesson? Modi understands that controlled military action can convert directly into votes, applause, and legitimacy. The current landscape? Pressure, criticism, and timing. Now, fast forward to today. Despite maintaining strong international relationships, Modi is facing a storm of internal challenges. Economic pressures due to inflation and unemployment, farmer protests that refuse to die down, rising criticism over religious tensions and minority rights, a shrinking international reputation as a liberal democracy. So what does a strong man do when his grip begins to loosen? He recenters the narrative. He recenters the narrative. He finds an enemy. He shifts attention away from internal weaknesses to external threats. Pakistan, India's historical rival, has always been the most convenient and emotionally charged target. A surprise military action, especially on a symbolic date like 14 August, would serve multiple political purposes. It silences internal critics who accuse him of being passive or distracted. It energizes his Hindu nationalist base, giving them an us vs them narrative. It paints him once again as the guardian of national pride. Modi's use of nationalism, more than politics, its identity. Modi doesn't just use nationalism as a campaign tool. It's the foundation of his brand. He rose to power by invoking Bharatiya pride, a vision of India as a muscular, assertive nation that no longer apologizes, no longer compromises, and never bows to external pressure. Under Modi's leadership, this vision has taken an aggressive edge. Revoking Article 370 in Kashmir, pushing for a uniform civil code, and realigning India's foreign policy are all part of this narrative. It's a story of India rising. And what better way to reinforce that story than by humbling a longtime rival on their most sacred day? A leader who understands media and momentum, Modi isn't just a politician. He's a master of public optics. He knows how to own the media cycle, dominate headlines, and create echo chambers. A well-timed military action would not be framed as aggression. It would be framed as preemptive justice, as a bold move, as necessary strength. In Modi's world, perception is power. The aim isn't always military victory. It's narrative control. Not just about Pakistan. It's about 1.4 billion eyes. When Modi acts, he does it knowing that 1.4 billion Indians are watching. He does it knowing that 1.4 billion Indians are watching. A leader under pressure, a regional rival with vulnerabilities, a date with emotional weight. It's the perfect recipe for what looks like a strategic gamble, but is actually a carefully calculated performance for domestic power. He doesn't need a full-scale war. He just needs one moment, one strike, at the right time to remind India of who he is. The man who acts when others hesitate. The man who shocks his enemies. The man who plays with dates, flags, and flames, and always lands on his feet. In the world of international conflict, silence is never accidental. When war looms and rumors begin to ripple across borders, governments do one of two things. They either deny and diffuse, or they disappear into silence. And when the silence comes from a regional superpower like India, especially during a period of rising tension with Pakistan, that silence becomes a message all its own. Right now, New Delhi is quiet. Too quiet. There are no major briefings from the Ministry of External Affairs. No press conferences from the Prime Minister's office. No clarifications from the Defense Ministry, despite escalating speculation in both Indian and Pakistani media. To the average viewer, this might look like nothing. But in geopolitics, this kind of silence is a chess move. It's a strategic cover for something that's already underway. Let's break down exactly why this silence may be the clearest signal that a 14 August military action is being planned. 1. The psychological advantage of silence. In traditional warfare, stealth is strength. The element of surprise determines success far more often than sheer numbers. And in the age of social media and 24/7 news, staying silent is harder than ever. That's why calculated silence is powerful. It's the new camouflage. If India were to telegraph its moves too early, Pakistan would have time to prepare, logistically, diplomatically, and psychologically. But by staying quiet, India keeps everyone guessing. Will there be a strike? What kind of strike? When? Or is this just another bluff? This uncertainty itself is a form of psychological warfare. It creates anxiety, paralysis, and paranoia inside Pakistan's defense circles. Military planners cannot prepare for a date or a tactic they don't know. This disarms without even firing a shot. 2. Modi's government knows the power of media noise and when to cut it. The Modi government is not new to controlling information. It has repeatedly shown mastery over timing, optics, and message discipline. During the 2019 Balakot airstrikes, the Indian government maintained silence right until the operation was complete. The public only learned about the attack after Indian jets had already crossed into Pakistani airspace. That silence served two purposes: operational secrecy, to avoid preemptive defense; narrative dominance, allowing Modi to break the news first and shape it however he wanted. Now, in 2025, we're seeing a similar silence. It's as if the stage is being set again. And this time, the audience is even larger, more divided, and more emotionally charged. 3. Strategic silence versus political noise. You may ask, if a strike is really being planned, wouldn't there be leaks? But here's the thing. Not all silence is absence. Sometimes silence is control. India has tightened internal security on defense briefings. Intelligence leaks have slowed down. Even the usually vocal Indian media is unusually subdued when it comes to specific questions about military preparedness. This suggests not chaos, but coordination. When powerful governments go silent, it's not because nothing is happening. It's because something very specific is, and they don't want the world to see it yet. 4. Pakistan is noticing this silence, and it's getting nervous. Pakistan's own military has subtly acknowledged India's quiet posture. There's been an increase in border surveillance and aerial patrols along the line of control. Pakistan has summoned its military attachés to conduct emergency briefings. There are reports of Pakistan's strategic assets being repositioned, just in case. This reaction tells us something vital. Islamabad is reading Delhi's silence as a red flag, not a sign of peace. Because in South Asia, silence doesn't mean diplomacy, it often means decision. 5. Why the world should pay attention to what's not being said. Western intelligence agencies are also watching the silence. There are whispers, unconfirmed, but persistent, that US and British intel networks have picked up unusual chatter between Indian Air Force bases and forward command stations. If true, this means one thing. India may already be moving into position, and the silence is the final mask before the first move. The silence before the shockwave. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't what your enemy says, it's what they stop saying. Right now, Modi's government isn't boasting, warning, or denying. It's observing, calculating, moving in shadows. And in war, that kind of silence doesn't mean safety. It means something is coming, something precise, something symbolic, maybe even something timed for August 14. So, if you're listening for explosions, you're already too late. The smart ones are listening for the silence. In international diplomacy, a ceasefire is supposed to represent wisdom, maturity, and a commitment to preventing further bloodshed. But not always. Sometimes a ceasefire is not seen as peace. Sometimes it's seen as capitulation, as weakness. And in India's case, the most recent truce with Pakistan didn't land as a victory. It landed like a slap to the nationalist psyche. Let's rewind to the recent India-Pakistan conflict. What started as a heated exchange of artillery, drones, and aggressive rhetoric escalated into a dangerous standoff. Borders were flaring. Newsrooms in both countries buzzed with war drums. And then, silence. A ceasefire. Brokered by none other than the U.S., under the diplomatic shadow of former President Donald Trump, who, despite being out of office, played a surprising role in pushing both sides back from the edge. So before we detour from that, let's talk about this early morning meeting between Secretary Pope and Senator Donald Trump, who, despite being out of office, played a surprising role in pushing both sides back from the edge. The announcement of the ceasefire came suddenly, and it came with no visible military gains for India. Worse, it came with optics that looked like retreat. And that, more than anything else, is what infuriated millions of Indians. Why? The ceasefire felt like a betrayal to the Indian public, to the Indian nationalist mind, especially the Modi loyalists. Talking to Pakistan without punishment is not diplomacy, it's insult. When soldiers are killed on the border, when videos of Pakistani flags waving in Kashmir circulate online, when terrorism still lingers as an unresolved ghost from decades past, calling for peace feels like forgetting. And forgetting, in their view, is betraying the blood that's already been spilled. When Modi agreed to the US-influenced ceasefire, the perception wasn't India is wise. It was Modi blinked. We stopped when we were winning. Pakistan escaped justice again. Social media in India erupted with outrage. Hashtags like no ceasefire, finish the fight, and Modi stand strong trended for days. For a leader who has built his image on strength, this moment chipped away at the illusion. Even if the ceasefire had strategic value, behind closed doors, to the public, it looked like submission. And for Modi, a man who knows how to read emotional tides, that backlash may have planted the seed for a future correction. How the ceasefire became a setup for a future strike. Now, here's the twist. What if that ceasefire wasn't the end of the conflict? What if it was a strategic pause, a time to reassess, regroup, and relaunch with better timing? Modi has shown in the past that he can bide his time. He lets the temperature rise, then strikes when public emotion is peaking. That's what he did after Uri. That's what he did after Pulwama. And now? The August 14 window gives him the perfect stage. It's emotionally loaded. The ceasefire backlash is still raw. The public wants resolution. Not in words, but in action. And if the government wants to redeem the perceived mistake of halting the last conflict prematurely, the only answer that satisfies nationalist sentiment is this: we're not stopping this time. Modi needs redemption, and retaliation delivers it. Populists, especially populists, don't like to be seen as weak. The ceasefire, even if diplomatically justified, damaged Modi's brand as the decisive protector. To assail one the only way to reclaim that image is with a bold move that overshadows the last one. That's where a surprise attack on August 14 comes into play. Not only would it be shocking, symbolic, and emotionally devastating for Pakistan, but it would also erase the memory of the last truce. It says to the Indian people, we paused, not because we were weak, but because we were waiting for the right moment. And August 14, Pakistan's Independence Day, is the right moment, the perfect psychological bookend. The last truce made people feel like India had been denied closure. A sudden, shocking offensive now delivers that closure in the most symbolic way possible. It transforms Modi from the man who stopped short to the man who struck harder and smarter when the time was right. And that's not just political genius. That's warfare of perception, the battlefield Modi understands best. Dates are never just numbers in politics. They are symbols. They carry the weight of memory, emotion, and power. They speak not only to the present, but to history, and, in the case of August 14th, to Pakistan's very identity. So if you're wondering why India under Prime Minister Modi might choose August 14th for a surprise attack, you're asking the right question. Because it's not about the battlefield, it's about the message. This keynote explores why August 14 isn't just a date. It's the most strategic psychological weapon Modi could use if he plans to strike. 1. Pakistan's Independence Day, a day of national pride. To every Pakistani, August 14th is sacred. It marks the birth of their country. It represents the success of the Muslim League's decades-long struggle for independence from British rule and separation from India. Second, Pakistan presents the success of the Muslim League as outright enough to even consider fighting India. 2, Pakistan is fought alone. Pakistan rarely wants any help or support. Dependency on the West for patronage, naval power, and money. 3. Pakistan's ideals of independence reflect in a piece written. It's a day celebrated with parades, flags, fireworks, and deep emotional reflection. So what happens if this very day, the moment meant to symbolize freedom and victory, is turned into a day of fear, shock, and attack? It becomes a psychological blow far more powerful than a standard military engagement. The message from India would be crystal clear. Even your most celebrated day is not safe. We can strike not just your land, but your legacy. We can set aside one day for celebrating other days, and set aside your day to discipline and enslave you. This would shake national morale in Pakistan in a way that a typical conflict never could. 2. Modi's use of symbolic timing. A proven pattern, Modi understands timing and symbolism. He has often chosen moments of maximum emotional resonance to make political and military statements. When he revoked Article 370 in Kashmir in August 2019, it wasn't random. It was carefully timed to assert control just before India's own Independence Day. So the Balakot airstrikes in 2019 came just months before national elections, tying Modi's personal image to India's military power. He has always known that the timing of an action can make it 10x more powerful than the action itself. So what better date than August 14th? Not only is it symbolic for Pakistan, but it precedes India's own Independence Day on August 15th. By striking on the 14th, Modi can send a message to his own people the next day. On the eve of our independence, we reminded Pakistan who we are. It creates a narrative crescendo, a perfect blend of attack, symbolism, and celebration. 3. Pakistan's vulnerability during national festivities. Let's be strategic for a moment. During major national holidays, a country's security posture changes. Leadership may be engaged in ceremonial duties. Citizens are more relaxed and distracted. Military deployments are often altered to allow for public celebrations. In other words, it's a moment of vulnerability. A surprise attack during such a time could create confusion, delay responses, and maximize the psychological impact. And if the attack is short, sharp, and surgical, it's even more devastating. No time to react. No time to coordinate countermeasures. Just shock. 4. Media optics. The perfect global headline. Imagine the international media headlines. India strikes Pakistan on its Independence Day. That kind of headline dominates the global narrative for days. And for Modi, who often plays for both domestic and international perception, it creates an opportunity to look bold, decisive, and dominant, especially if he frames it as a preemptive counterterrorism strike, a response to ongoing threats, a reminder of India's red lines. Modi's media machinery is powerful. With just one press conference, he can turn the world's most aggressive act into a speech about protecting peace, a tactic he's mastered. It was in the first scene. 5. A date that becomes a warning for the future. August 14 is not just a good date to attack. It's a dangerous precedent. If India were to strike on that day, it would forever taint Pakistan's sense of security on its most sacred date. It becomes a symbolic warning. We'll choose the day you least expect and hit you where it hurts the most. This kind of psychological warfare creates long-term consequences. It can change military planning, domestic politics, and public confidence for years. And for a leader like Modi, who plays the long game, this is not just about war. It's about legacy. This is not just war. It's theater. Modi doesn't just lead with weapons. He leads with symbols. He understands that wars are not only fought with missiles and jets, they are fought with meanings. August 14 is the ultimate message. It says, we control the narrative. We control the timing. We control how history remembers this moment. And in the world of modern geopolitics, that's more dangerous than any bomb. When a ceasefire happens between two hostile nuclear nations like India and Pakistan, the world watches carefully. But when that ceasefire is brokered or nudged into place by an external power, especially the United States, it becomes more than just diplomacy. It becomes a global chessboard. In the case of the most recent India-Pakistan clash, all eyes turned not just to New Delhi or Islamabad, but to Donald Trump, a former U.S. president who, even out of office, managed to insert himself into a moment of high tension and reshape the conflict without a single bullet being fired. But the big question is, did Trump's involvement help avoid a war, or did it hand Pakistan an unexpected win at India's expense? Let's unpack why Trump's role may have tipped the scales in Islamabad's favor, and why that might be pushing India to reassert itself with military action, possibly on August 14th. 1. Trump's diplomatic style: bold, personal, and unpredictable. Unlike traditional U.S. presidents who delegate foreign policy to teams of advisors and diplomats, Trump has always operated differently. He favors personal relationships, direct intervention, and dramatic gestures. So when tensions flared between India and Pakistan, Trump's call for calm wasn't just diplomacy, it was theater. He reportedly spoke to both governments, offered mediation, and publicly praised restraint. But this style of engagement often comes at a cost, especially for allies like India, who prefer quiet strategic moves over headline-grabbing deals. And in this case, India appeared to be pressured into accepting the ceasefire at a moment when it held the military advantage. 2. Perception versus reality. Did India look weakened on the global stage? Even if India had legitimate reasons to accept the ceasefire, such as avoiding a full-scale war, preventing civilian casualties, or containing economic fallout, the optics were brutal. Pakistan looked like the side that survived again. India, despite its military buildup, appeared to stand down under foreign pressure. Modi's image as the decisive strongman suffered damage both domestically and internationally. And who was credited for stopping the escalation? Donald Trump. This created a troubling narrative that India can't complete a military operation without outside interference. For a country that sees itself as a rising superpower, that narrative is intolerable. 3. How Pakistan benefited from the ceasefire optics. While India faced internal disappointment, Pakistan gained breathing space. The Pakistani government could claim victory in preventing war. The military was seen as effective in holding its ground. International sympathy subtly shifted in Pakistan's favor, especially after Trump praised Islamabad for its mature response. Even if Pakistan didn't win on the battlefield, it won on the diplomatic scoreboard. And in warfare, especially with nuclear-armed neighbors, winning perception often matters more than winning territory. 4. Modi's government can't afford another Trump moment. One thing Narendra Modi values above all is autonomy. India's foreign policy doctrine is rooted in non-alignment, self-determination, and strategic independence. Trump's role in halting the conflict, even if unintentional, undermined all three. For Modi, being seen as bowing to U.S. pressure, especially from someone as erratic as Trump, was a strategic embarrassment. And while Indian officials didn't publicly criticize Trump's mediation, behind the scenes the mood was clear. This can't happen again. To reassert control, India may now be planning something bold, a move that reclaims initiative, silences criticism, and resets the balance. A surprise military strike on August 14th would do all three. 5. India's need to send a message to both Pakistan and Washington. If India attacks on August 14th, the message won't just be for Pakistan, it will be for America too. It will say, we don't need your mediation. We choose our own timing. We won't let outside powers dictate our borders or our responses. It's a geopolitical flex meant to push back against the notion that Trump or any Western leader can manage South Asian security without India's consent. And in an election year where Modi's reputation as a defender of national honor is key, such a message would reignite domestic support and global credibility. Trump may have stopped one war, but he might have sparked the next in trying to solve the India-Pakistan standoff. Donald Trump may have unintentionally created the perfect storm for a new one. He gave Pakistan room to breathe, he made India look hesitant, and he inserted U.S. diplomacy into a region where autonomy is everything. Now, Modi's government has every reason to reclaim that autonomy with force, with timing, and with symbolism. And what day could be more perfect than Pakistan's Independence Day when the world least expects it? This isn't just about war. It's about reclaiming the stage. In today's world, missiles are launched second. Narratives are launched first. Governments don't just plan military actions based on strategy and terrain. They build them around emotion, symbolism, timing, and perception. And few leaders understand this better than Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Which brings us to this. If India truly plans a surprise attack on August 14th, it's not just about military objectives. It's about psychological warfare, a deep, calculated move to shock Pakistan and rewrite India's national narrative after recent diplomatic humiliation. Let's explore how such an action becomes a masterstroke of psychological dominance, far beyond the battlefield. 1. Reclaiming control of the narrative after the recent ceasefire. Heavily influenced by U.S. diplomacy, India appeared to step back. While many understood the strategic need for a pause, the Indian public, especially nationalist voices, saw it as a loss of control over the story, control over timing, control over the enemy. A surprise attack on Pakistan's Independence Day immediately flips that perception. It sends a clear, aggressive message. We write the script. We choose the moment. You react to us. This reclaims the psychological initiative, something far more powerful than territory alone. 2. Disrupting Pakistan's sense of security and celebration. August 14 is a day of pride, unity, and nationalism in Pakistan. Children wave flags, military parades fill the streets, speeches echo the glory of independence. Now imagine, just hours into these celebrations, sirens replace songs, and the very soil people are celebrating is under attack. This isn't just a tactical disruption, it's an emotional violation of national pride. It shows Pakistan that no day is sacred, no symbol is untouchable, not even the anniversary of their birth as a nation. This kind of move sends shockwaves through public consciousness. It introduces a new fear. If they can strike on August 14, what day is safe? And that fear doesn't go away when the smoke clears. 3. Weaponizing emotion. Fuel for nationalism. Psychological warfare is not just used against the enemy. It's also aimed at your own people. A sudden, aggressive strike, especially one tied to a symbolic date, can reignite national unity, especially if the leader is seen as bold, decisive, and unapologetic. For Modi, this could be the moment that transforms. Disappointment from the ceasefire, frustration over foreign influence, criticism over inaction, into a wave of support, patriotism, and belief. The narrative becomes, we were quiet because we were planning something greater. This isn't weakness, it's timing. And in the age of social media, when a narrative can trend within minutes, this emotional trigger could reshape the political atmosphere instantly. 4. Creating confusion and delay in the opponent's mind. Surprise attacks don't just hurt, they paralyze. If Pakistan's leadership and military are unprepared for a strike on August 14, their response is delayed, their communication suffers, and their public messaging collapses into confusion. This chaos gives India a short but powerful psychological edge, a window to define the story before Pakistan can react. And in warfare, that window is everything. 5. Rebranding India's image on the global stage. After being seen as soft for agreeing to the ceasefire, India has a chance to reframe its global image. A swift, symbolic strike on Pakistan, especially if packaged as a response to terrorist threats or ongoing provocation, allows India to look like a decisive superpower, a regional enforcer, a nation that acts on its own terms. The world may criticize the aggression, but they will also respect the message. 6. Deterrence through unpredictability. The essence of psychological warfare is not just winning one battle, it's creating doubt in the enemy's mind forever. A surprise strike on August 14th creates a long-lasting mental scar in Pakistan's defense apparatus. They will forever ask, will they do it again? What's next? Can we ever let our guard down? This perpetual state of mental fatigue and preparation is itself a weapon, draining resources, delaying plans, and breeding anxiety. The war before the war. Modi doesn't need to occupy a city to win. He doesn't even need a full-scale war. He only needs to make a move so psychologically intense, so symbolic, unexpected, and timed to perfection that it rewires the emotional state of both nations. That's what a surprise strike on August 14th would do. It's not just a military option. It's a national rebranding, a shock doctrine, and a masterclass in emotional manipulation, all rolled into one. And in today's world, where perception is power, that may be the most dangerous weapon of all.